A millionaire abandons his wife in search of success. But here's the shocking twist. He was right to leave. This controversial decision leads to an unbelievable encounter at the airport that will challenge his sanity as to all he may have lost, perhaps forever. Can a man who sacrificed everything for ambition find redemption? The answer may not be so obvious. The soft glow of the morning sun filtered through the curtains of Jessica Turner's modest Queens apartment. At 38, she moved with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had long ago mastered the art of single motherhood. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, a few strands escaping to frame her face as she bustled about the kitchen. "Ryan, breakfast is ready, sweetie," she called out, placing a plate of scrambled eggs and toast on the small dining table. A moment later, the patter of small feet announced the arrival of her 7-year-old son. Ryan's unruly mop of dark hair, so like his father's, was still tousled from sleep. "Morning, Mom," he mumbled, climbing onto his chair. Jessica smiled, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Eat up, buddy. We've got a big day ahead." As Ryan tucked into his breakfast, Jessica sipped her coffee, her mind wandering to the day that lay before them. It was the start of their first real vacation in years, a week-long trip to Florida to visit her parents. The thought of sunshine and beach days with her son filled her with excitement. But there was also a familiar undercurrent of anxiety. Travel always meant extra expenses, time off work, and the countless logistical challenges that came with being a single parent. "Mom, can we go to Disney World?" Ryan asked, his mouth full of eggs. Jessica chuckled. "Not this time, sweetie, but we'll have lots of fun at the beach with Grandma and Grandpa, I promise." As they finished breakfast and began their final preparations for the trip, Jessica's thoughts drifted, as they often did in quiet moments, to Michael. It had been 7 years since he'd walked out of their lives, chasing his dreams of wealth and success in Silicon Valley. 7 years of birthdays, Christmases, and milestones that he'd missed. 7 years of Ryan growing up without a father. The familiar ache in her chest tightened as she zipped up their suitcases. She'd long ago accepted that this was their life now, just her and Ryan against the world. But on days like this, when the weight of single parenthood felt particularly heavy, she couldn't help but wonder what might have been. Pushing the thoughts aside, Jessica plastered on a smile. "Ready for an adventure, kiddo?" Ryan's enthusiastic nod brought a genuine warmth to her heart. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The taxi ride to JFK Airport was a whirlwind of Ryan's excited chatter and last-minute checks of their travel documents. As they navigated the bustling terminal, Jessica kept a firm grip on Ryan's hand, her eyes scanning the crowds for their gate number. "Gate 23, Gate 23, she muttered to herself, pulling their rolling suitcase behind her. "Mom, look at that big plane!" Ryan exclaimed, pointing at a massive aircraft visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Jessica smiled at his enthusiasm. "Pretty cool, huh? Maybe you'll be a pilot someday." As they rounded a corner, Jessica's eyes locked onto their gate number. Relief washed over her. They were right on time, but as she took a step forward, her world suddenly tilted on its axis. There, not 20 feet away, stood Michael. Time seemed to slow as Jessica's brain struggled to process the sight before her. Michael looked older, his once boyish features now more chiseled, his dark hair flecked with the first hints of gray. But it was undeniably him, standing there in an expensive suit, his attention focused on a smartphone in his hand. Jessica's heart pounded in her chest, her palms suddenly clammy. She hadn't seen Michael since that fateful morning 7 years ago, when he'd walked out of their apartment and out of their lives. And now here he was, in the same airport on the same day they were traveling. "Mom?" Ryan's voice snapped her back to reality. "Why did we stop?" Before Jessica could respond, Michael looked up from his phone. His eyes widened as they met hers, a flicker of recognition followed by shock passing over his face. Then his gaze dropped to Ryan, and Jessica saw the exact moment realization dawned. Michael took a halting step forward, his mouth opening as if to speak. Jessica instinctively pulled Ryan closer, her protective instincts kicking into overdrive. "Jessica?" Michael's voice was barely audible over the din of the airport, but it sent a jolt through her nonetheless. Ryan looked up at his mother, confusion evident in his eyes. "Mom, who's that man?" Jessica swallowed hard, her mind racing. How could she explain this to her son? How could she face the man who had abandoned them both? As Michael took another step towards them, Jessica made a split-second decision. "Come on, sweetie," she said, her voice tight as she tugged Ryan in the opposite direction. "We need to get to our gate." "But Mom," Ryan protested, looking back at the stranger who was still staring at them. "Not now, Ryan," Jessica cut him off, her tone sharper than she intended. She could feel Michael's eyes boring into her back as they hurried away, her heart hammering in her chest. As they found seats near their gate, Jessica's mind was in turmoil. What was Michael doing here? Did he recognize Ryan? What would happen now? Ryan's small voice broke through her panicked thoughts. "Mom, are you okay? You look scared." Jessica took a deep breath, forcing herself to smile at her son. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just a little tired from all the excitement." As she held Ryan close, Jessica's eyes darted around the terminal, half expecting to see Michael appear at any moment. But he was nowhere to be seen. The encounter had lasted less than a minute, but Jessica knew with a sinking feeling that everything had changed. Their carefully constructed life, the routines and rhythms they'd built over 7 years, suddenly felt fragile and uncertain. As the boarding call for their flight came over the loudspeaker, Jessica gathered their belongings with shaky hands. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it as she had faced every challenge since becoming a single mother, with determination, love, and the fierce protectiveness that only a parent could understand. But as they made their way onto the plane, Jessica couldn't shake the image of Michael's face, the shock, the recognition, and something else she couldn't quite name. Something that looked unsettlingly like longing. As the plane ascended into the clear blue sky, leaving the sprawling expanse of New York City behind, Jessica's mind drifted back to another time. A time when her life had seemed full of promise and possibility. She had met Michael Turner during her sophomore year of college. He was charming, ambitious, and full of dreams about changing the world through technology. Jessica, practical and grounded, had been drawn to his infectious enthusiasm. They were opposites in many ways, but somehow they balanced each other perfectly. Their whirlwind romance had culminated in a simple wedding ceremony just after graduation. Jessica could still remember the hope and joy she'd felt that day, standing beside Michael and imagining their future together. They had talked about building a life, a family, a home filled with love and laughter. For a while, it seemed like their dreams were coming true. Jessica found work as a paralegal, while Michael threw himself into various tech startups. They moved into a small apartment in Queens, spending their evenings planning for the future and their weekends exploring the city they both loved. But as the years passed, something began to change. Michael's ambition, once a quality Jessica had admired, started to consume him. He worked longer hours, missed dinners, forgot anniversaries. When he was home, he was distracted, always talking about his latest project or the next big opportunity. Jessica tried to be supportive, to understand the pressure he was under. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they were drifting apart, that the life they had planned together was slipping away. The memory of their last night together was etched into Jessica's mind with painful clarity. She had confronted Michael about his increasing absences, his lack of interest in their life together. The argument that followed was bitter and raw, years of unspoken resentments bubbling to the surface. "I can't do this anymore, Jess," Michael had said, his voice cold and distant. "I'm suffocating here. I need more than this. More than a cramped apartment and a dead-end job. I need to make something of myself." Jessica's pleas had fallen on deaf ears. The next morning, she woke to find Michael gone. A hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter, explaining that he had taken a job with a promising startup in Silicon Valley. He promised to call, to figure things out, but Jessica knew in her heart that their life together was over. 2 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. The memory of those early days of her pregnancy, filled with fear and uncertainty, made Jessica instinctively tighten her arm around Ryan, who was dozing peacefully in the seat beside her. She had considered reaching out to Michael then, telling him about the baby, but the wound of his abandonment was still too fresh, the anger too raw, and a part of her, a part she wasn't proud of, wanted to hurt him the way he had hurt her. So she had made the decision to go it alone. It hadn't been easy, far from it. There were nights of tears and doubt, days when the challenge of balancing work and impending motherhood seemed insurmountable. But Jessica had found a strength within herself she never knew existed. When Ryan was born, tiny and perfect with a shock of dark hair so like his father's, Jessica had fallen in love instantly. Looking into her son's eyes, she had made a silent vow. She would give this child everything, would be both mother and father, would create a life filled with love and security. The years that followed were a blur of firsts. First steps, first words, first day of school. Jessica had navigated it all on her own, building a support network of friends and colleagues who became like family. She worked hard, advancing in her career while pursuing her dream of becoming a lawyer through night classes. There were moments of doubt, of course. Times when Ryan would ask about his father, and Jessica would struggle to find the right words. She never lied to her son, but she kept the truth simple. Dad had to go away for work, but he loved Ryan very much. It was easier than explaining the complexities of adult relationships, the pain of abandonment, the choice Michael had made. As the plane began its descent into Orlando, Jessica was jolted back to the present by the captain's announcement. Ryan stirred beside her, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "Are we there, Mom?" he asked, peering out the window at the landscape below. Jessica nodded, forcing a smile. "Almost, sweetie. Grandma and Grandpa will be waiting for us at the airport." As they made their way through Orlando International Airport, Jessica couldn't shake the memory of their encounter with Michael. The shock on his face, the way his eyes had widened as they fell on Ryan. It was clear he had put the pieces together. What would happen now? Would Michael try to contact them? Did he have any right to be part of Ryan's life after all this time? Jessica's thoughts were interrupted by Ryan's excited shout. "Grandma! Grandpa!" He broke free from her grasp, running towards the elderly couple waiting near the baggage claim. Watching her son being enveloped in his grandparents' embrace, Jessica felt a mix of emotions wash over her. Love for her family, gratitude for their support, and an undercurrent of anxiety about what the future might hold. As she joined the group hug, her mother whispered in her ear, "Are you all right, dear? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jessica pulled back, meeting her mother's concerned gaze. "I'm fine, Mom. Just tired from the trip." But even as she said the words, she knew they weren't true. She had seen a ghost, the ghost of her past, of the life she thought she had left behind. As they made their way to her parents' car, Ryan chattering excitedly about their plans for the week, Jessica made a decision. She would enjoy this vacation with her son, would create happy memories untainted by the specter of Michael's reappearance. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they could wait until they returned to New York. But as they drove towards her parents' home, the Florida sunshine bright and cheerful outside the car windows, Jessica couldn't quite shake the feeling that their carefully constructed life was about to change in ways she couldn't begin to imagine. The Florida vacation passed in a blur of beach days, family dinners, and Ryan's delighted laughter. Jessica threw herself into creating happy memories for her son, pushing thoughts of Michael to the back of her mind. But as the return to New York loomed, anxiety began to creep back in. Would Michael be waiting for them? Would he try to contact them? The questions swirled in Jessica's mind as they boarded their flight home. Their apartment in Queens felt smaller somehow when they returned, as if the weight of Jessica's worries had compressed the space. As she unpacked their suitcases, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Jessica, it's Michael. Can we talk?" Her heart raced as she stared at the screen. How had he gotten her number? What did he want? She set the phone aside without replying, focusing instead on getting Ryan settled back into their routine. But Michael was persistent. Over the next few days, more messages arrived, each one a little more urgent than the last. Finally, unable to ignore him any longer, Jessica agreed to meet in a neutral location, a coffee shop near her office. The day of the meeting arrived, and Jessica found herself standing outside the cafe, her hand on the door handle, unable to make herself enter. Through the window, she could see Michael sitting at a table, his fingers drumming nervously on the surface. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open and stepped inside. Michael looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and for a moment, it was as if no time had passed at all. Then reality crashed back in, and Jessica felt the weight of the 7 years that separated them. "Jessica," Michael said, standing as she approached the table. "Thank you for coming." She nodded stiffly, taking a seat across from him. "What do you want, Michael?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Jessica's chest ache. I want to explain, to apologize. When I saw you at the airport with Ryan, I realized what a terrible mistake I'd made." Jessica's defenses rose. "A mistake? Is that what you call abandoning your pregnant wife? Not bothering to check in for 7 years?" Michael winced at her words. "I know I hurt you, Jess. I was selfish and stupid. But I want to make it right. I want to be part of Ryan's life." The conversation that followed was tense and emotional. Michael explained how his ambition had blinded him, how he'd convinced himself that success would make everything right. Jessica spoke of the challenges of single motherhood, of the milestones Michael had missed. As they talked, Jessica found her anger slowly giving way to a complicated mix of emotions. There was still hurt, still resentment, but also a flicker of something else, a recognition of the man she had once loved in the person sitting across from her. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Michael said finally. "I know I don't deserve it. But please give me a chance to know my son." Jessica was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. "I need to think about this, Michael. It's not just about us anymore. Ryan's well-being has to come first." Michael nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere this time, I promise." As Jessica left the cafe, her mind was whirling. Could she trust Michael's promises? Was it fair to keep Ryan from knowing his father? The questions followed her home, where she found herself staring at a photo of Ryan, trying to imagine how this decision would affect his future. After days of internal debate and long conversations with her closest friends, Jessica made a decision. She would allow Michael to meet Ryan, but on her terms. The first meeting would be in a neutral location, Central Park, where they could talk casually without the pressure of being in either of their homes. The day of the meeting dawned bright and clear. Jessica and Ryan arrived at the agreed-upon spot near the Bethesda fountain, Ryan full of questions about the friend they were meeting. When Michael appeared, Jessica felt Ryan tense beside her. She knelt down to his level, her voice gentle. "Ryan, there's someone I'd like you to meet. This is Michael, your dad." Ryan's eyes widened, darting between Jessica and Michael. "My dad?" he whispered, a mix of confusion and curiosity in his voice. Michael knelt down too, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Hi, Ryan. I'm so happy to meet you." The next hour was a whirlwind of awkward conversations and tentative connections. Ryan, initially shy, gradually opened up as Michael asked him about school, his friends, and his favorite superheroes. Jessica watched from a nearby bench, her heart a tangle of conflicting emotions. As the meeting drew to a close, Ryan turned to Jessica. "Can we see Dad again soon?" The question, so innocent and hopeful, brought tears to Jessica's eyes. She looked at Michael, seeing her own complex emotions mirrored in his face. "We'll see, sweetie," Jessica replied, her voice soft. "Let's take things one step at a time, okay?" As they said their goodbyes, Michael's eyes met Jessica's over Ryan's head. There was gratitude there, and a silent promise, a promise to do better, to be the father Ryan deserved. Walking home, Ryan's small hand in hers, Jessica felt a mix of hope and trepidation. This was just the beginning of a long, complicated journey. But seeing the spark of joy in her son's eyes, she knew she had made the right decision, no matter how challenging the path ahead might be. The weeks following the Central Park meeting brought a whirlwind of changes to Jessica and Ryan's life. Michael, true to his word, made consistent efforts to be present in Ryan's life. He attended school events, showed up for weekend outings, and even helped with homework over video calls when his work kept him in California. For Ryan, it was a period of excitement and adjustment. Having a father figure suddenly present in his life was thrilling, but it also brought confusion and questions. "Why didn't Dad live with us before?" he asked Jessica one night as she tucked him into bed. "Will he live with us now?" Jessica struggled to find the right words to explain the complexities of adult relationships to a 7-year-old. "Your dad and I, we had some grown-up problems, sweetie. But he's here now because he wants to be part of your life. We're still figuring out what that looks like, okay?" As the leaves in Central Park turned golden and then fell, marking the passage of autumn into winter. Jessica found herself navigating a new normal. Co-parenting with Michael was a delicate dance, filled with awkward moments and unspoken tensions. The first major test came with the approach of the holiday season. Thanksgiving had always been a quiet affair for Jessica and Ryan, usually spent with Jessica's parents or close friends. But this year, Michael wanted to be involved. "I was thinking," he said during one of their now regular coffee meetings to discuss Ryan's schedule, "maybe we could all have Thanksgiving dinner together? My parents would love to meet Ryan." Jessica felt a knot form in her stomach. The idea of spending a holiday with Michael and his family, pretending everything was normal, felt overwhelming. But she could see the hope in Michael's eyes, and she knew Ryan would be excited by the idea. "I'll think about it," she said finally, buying herself some time to process the suggestion. In the end, they compromised on a small gathering at Jessica's apartment. Michael's parents would come for dessert, giving them a chance to meet their grandson without the pressure of a full family dinner. The day itself was a strange mix of old and new traditions. Jessica and Ryan spent the morning as they always had, watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade on TV and preparing simple side dishes. When Michael arrived in the afternoon, his arms laden with bags from a gourmet grocery store, the atmosphere shifted. Ryan was ecstatic, bouncing between his parents and peppering Michael with questions about the parade floats and the football games that would be on later. Jessica found herself hanging back, watching the easy rapport developing between father and son, with a mix of joy and an emotion she couldn't quite name, something close to loss. The arrival of Michael's parents added another layer of complexity to the day. They were warm and eager to connect with Ryan, bringing gifts and stories about Michael's childhood. But Jessica couldn't help noticing the sidelong glances, the unasked questions hanging in the air. As the evening wound down and Ryan fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from the excitement, Jessica found herself alone in the kitchen with Michael. They worked in silence, cleaning up the remnants of the meal. "Thank you for today," Michael said softly, handing her a dish to dry. "It meant a lot to me, and to my parents." Jessica nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The day had been lovely in many ways, but it had also brought home the reality of their situation, the years lost, the family they could have been. As winter deepened, bringing with it the glitter and bustle of the holiday season in New York, Jessica found herself constantly balancing Ryan's excitement with her own complex emotions. Christmas shopping now involved discussions about what Dad might like. School events meant coordinating schedules and sometimes awkward encounters with other parents curious about the sudden appearance of Ryan's father. Through it all, Jessica watched Ryan closely, alert for any signs of distress or confusion. But her son seemed to be thriving, his natural resilience helping him adapt to the new family dynamic. It was Jessica who often found herself struggling, caught between her desire to support Ryan's relationship with his father and her own unresolved feelings about Michael's abandonment. The breaking point came on a snowy evening in late December. Michael had taken Ryan ice skating in Central Park, a father-son outing that had Ryan bubbling with excitement for days. When they returned, rosy-cheeked and laughing, Jessica felt a sudden, sharp pang of jealousy. Later, after Ryan was in bed, Jessica found herself facing Michael across the kitchen table, years of pent-up emotion finally spilling over. "You can't just walk back in and be the fun dad," she said, her voice low and intense. "You have no idea what it's been like, Michael. The sleepless nights, the doctor's appointments, the school meetings, I did it all alone. And now you get to swoop in and be the hero." Michael's face fell, the joy from the evening's outing fading from his eyes. "Jess, I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm just trying to be a father to my son. I know I can never make up for the time I lost, but I'm here now. I want to do my part." As they talked late into the night, hashing out years of hurt and misunderstanding, Jessica realized that this was just the beginning of a long process. Co-parenting with Michael wasn't going to be easy. It would require patience, communication, and a willingness to put Ryan's needs above their own complicated history. As Michael prepared to leave, pulling on his coat in the entryway, he paused. "I know this isn't easy for you, Jess, but thank you for giving me a chance to know our son. I promise you, I'm in this for the long haul." Watching him disappear into the snowy night, Jessica leaned against the closed door, exhausted, but with a glimmer of hope in her heart. They had a long way to go, but for Ryan's sake, and maybe, just maybe, for their own, They would find a way to make this new family dynamic work. As winter melted into spring, the delicate balance Jessica had been maintaining began to show signs of strain. Michael, emboldened by his growing relationship with Ryan, started to push for more involvement in their son's life. The tipping point came when he suggested enrolling Ryan in an exclusive private school. "It's one of the best in the city," Michael explained enthusiastically over coffee one afternoon. "They have an amazing STEM program, and with my connections, I'm sure we could get Ryan in for the next school year." Jessica felt her defenses rise immediately. "Ryan's happy at his current school. He has friends there, teachers who know him. We can't just uproot him because you think you found something better." Michael's expression hardened. "I'm not trying to uproot him, Jess. I'm trying to give him opportunities. Isn't that what we both want?" The argument that followed was heated, bringing to the surface all the tensions that had been simmering beneath their cordial co-parenting arrangement. Jessica accused Michael of trying to buy Ryan's affection with expensive gifts and grand gestures. Michael countered that he was simply trying to provide the best for his son, something he should have been doing all along. "You can't just waltz back into our lives and start making decisions," Jessica said, her voice rising. "You have no idea what Ryan needs. You've been absent for 7 years. Michael's face flushed with anger and shame. "And I'm trying to make up for that. Why can't you see that I'm doing my best here?" Their argument spilled out onto the busy New York street, drawing curious glances from passers-by. As they stood there, both breathing heavily, the weight of their shared history and unresolved feelings hung heavy between them. "I think we need some time to cool off," Jessica said finally, her voice tight with emotion. "I'll talk to you later about Ryan's weekend schedule." As she walked away, leaving Michael standing on the sidewalk, Jessica felt a mix of anger and sadness wash over her. They had come so far in the past few months, but moments like this showed just how fragile their new dynamic really was. The tension from their argument lingered in the following weeks. Ryan, perceptive as ever, picked up on the strained atmosphere during handovers and family outings. "Are you and Dad fighting?" he asked Jessica one evening as she tucked him into bed. Jessica's heart clenched at the worry in her son's voice. "We're just having some grown-up disagreements, sweetie. But we both love you very much, and that's never going to change." As spring bloomed across the city, Jessica and Michael found themselves at an impasse. Every decision, from summer camp options to weekend activities, became a potential battleground. Their different parenting styles and priorities, once complementary, now seemed to clash at every turn. The situation came to a head during a parent-teacher conference at Ryan's school. As they sat side by side in the small classroom, listening to Ryan's teacher praise his progress, Jessica could feel the tension radiating from Michael. When the teacher mentioned that Ryan sometimes seemed distracted in class, Michael jumped in. "Maybe this is a sign he needs more challenging work," he suggested, shooting a pointed look at Jessica. "We've been considering other school options that might be a better fit." Jessica felt her face grow hot with embarrassment and anger. "We haven't decided anything," she said quickly, forcing a smile at the confused-looking teacher. "Ryan's very happy here." The drive home was silent, the air thick with unspoken words. As they pulled up to Jessica's apartment building, Michael finally spoke. "We can't go on like this, Jess. We're confusing Ryan and making each other miserable." Jessica nodded, feeling suddenly exhausted. "I know, but I don't know how to fix this, Michael. We seem to disagree on everything these days." Michael was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Maybe we need some help. Professional help. For Ryan's sake, if not for our own." The suggestion of family therapy hung between them, a lifeline neither had been willing to grasp until now. Jessica found herself nodding slowly. "Okay," she said. "For Ryan." As she watched Michael's car disappear down the street, Jessica felt a glimmer of hope beneath the weight of their recent struggles. They had a long way to go, but taking this step together was a start. The family therapy sessions began on a warm Saturday morning in early summer. As Jessica, Michael, and Ryan settled into the cozy office, the tension was palpable. Dr. Larson, a kind-faced woman with graying hair, smiled warmly at them. "Why don't we start by talking about what brings you here today?" she asked, her voice gentle but firm. Over the next hour, Jessica and Michael haltingly shared their story. The early years of their relationship, Michael's departure, Jessica's journey as a single mother, and the complicated dynamics of their current situation. Ryan, quiet at first, gradually opened up about his confusion and his hopes for their family. As the weeks passed, the therapy sessions became a safe space for all three of them to express their feelings and work through their conflicts. Dr. Larson guided them through exercises in communication and understanding, helping them to see each other's perspectives. For Jessica, the process was both painful and liberating. She found herself confronting years of buried anger and hurt, but also rediscovering the parts of Michael that she had once loved. Michael, for his part, began to truly understand the impact of his absence and the depth of Jessica's strength in raising Ryan alone. Ryan, caught in the middle for so long, flourished under the guidance of Dr. Larson. He learned to express his fears and hopes, and to understand that the complications in his parents' relationship weren't his fault. Outside of therapy, Jessica and Michael worked on implementing the strategies they were learning. They established clear boundaries and communication channels, focusing on consistency in their parenting approaches. Slowly but surely, the tension between them began to ease. One breakthrough moment came during a family picnic in Central Park. As they sat on a checkered blanket, watching Ryan play frisbee with some other children, Michael turned to Jessica. "I never properly thanked you," he said softly. Jessica looked at him, puzzled. "For what?" "For being an amazing mother to Ryan. For doing what I couldn't or wouldn't do. I was so caught up in my own ambitions that I missed out on the most important thing in life. I'm sorry, Jess. Truly sorry." The sincerity in his voice brought tears to Jessica's eyes. For the first time in years, she felt the wall around her heart begin to crumble. "Thank you," she whispered. "That means a lot." As summer turned to fall, their new family dynamic settled into a rhythm. Michael had relocated permanently to New York, renting an apartment not far from Jessica and Ryan. They established a flexible custody arrangement, with Ryan spending time at both homes. Jessica watched with a mix of joy and wistfulness as Ryan and Michael's bond deepened. There were still moments of sadness for the years lost, but they were overshadowed by the happiness of seeing her son flourish with both parents in his life. One crisp autumn evening, as they sat on a bench watching Ryan's soccer practice, Michael turned to Jessica with a serious expression. "I know we can never go back to what we were," he said slowly, "but I want you to know that I'm committed to this, to our family, whatever form it takes. You and Ryan are the most important people in my life, and I'm not going anywhere this time." Jessica felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I believe you," she said softly, and she realized with some surprise that she truly did. 5 years later, on a sunny June morning, Jessica and Michael sat side by side in the auditorium of Ryan's middle school, watching their son receive an award for academic excellence. As Ryan beamed at them from the stage, Jessica felt Michael's hand slip into hers, squeezing gently. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks and arguments, moments of doubt and frustration, but they had persevered, always putting Ryan's well-being first. In the process, they had forged a new kind of family, not the traditional one they had once envisioned, but one built on understanding, forgiveness, and shared love for their son. As they stood to applaud Ryan, Jessica caught Michael's eye. The look they shared spoke volumes, of pride in their son, of gratitude for second chances, of the deep, complex love that had weathered storms and emerged stronger. Walking out of the school, Ryan between them chattering excitedly about his award, Jessica felt a profound sense of peace. Their family might not be conventional, but it was theirs, hard-won and precious. And as they stepped into the bright summer day, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. What did you think of Jessica's story? Leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm sure there will be new videos on this channel that will surprise you. Give it a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. See you soon.